what you have, where you sit with the tree. But for me, nature bathing and being, in Oregon, we got the forest and the lakes and the streams. That's probably what I would consider my church, if you will, and where
Yes.
I seem to get a lot of my healing energy from, as well as just the
Yes.
mother. And
Yes.
you kind of mentioned too that you have the trees, and then obviously, like most of us, you also have that beautiful ocean that you connect to. So are you able
Mhm.
to like get out in the ocean and kind of, that can be a very healing, is that a healing practice for you to do when you're that close, is go swim and be in the mana?
My girlfriends and I actually we go to the beach usually on Sundays together, and we've started calling it church.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
love
so
it.
like we've been we go to church every Sunday, and if I can get in any other time, I do. But I really love living here in Puerto Vallarta because in Southern Oregon we have the beautiful mountains. The mountains always have felt like a hug to me.
Right.
And so coming here, we have amazing mountains and we have the ocean. So I have my hugging mountains, and then I have the ocean, and it is so amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what a beautiful healing place. And again, just you sharing the visual pictures from there, it makes me feel better and healing, and just a wonderful thing. And
Well,
then
and real
so
quick, hold on one
yeah,
second. Real quick, like
please.
you were talking about coming out in nature, nature bathing, grounding, actually taking your shoes off, getting your body
Yeah.
on the earth is also really, really great for your parasympathetic nervous system.
Oh,
So it's
hugely.
really good for your nervous system to move you out of the fight or flight, which is like the place where it's fearful, you can't see options or opportunities. And it's like that yeah, it's just the fear state. And
Yeah.
many humans get stuck in that place through trauma that's happened throughout life. And the way that I look at trauma is we're humans, we come to this earth, trauma happens. It's not that you've done something wrong. Trauma to me is just excess energy that's been stored in the body. So it could be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. It's something that's happened that our body didn't have the capacity to fight back, to run from. It's extra energy. So maybe you were young and you didn't know how. Maybe you were in a car accident and you couldn't escape. It's trauma isn't something to be ashamed of. It is something that every single human has, whether it's micro or macro, and it builds over our lifetime. And it actually gets stuck and stored in our body. And so that's what I've learned since brain surgery is it's what I teach. I teach people the language of their bodies and how to work with their nervous system to release emotions, to release stored and stuck energy or trauma. So I look at it from a perspective where it isn't something to be ashamed of. It is something
Yeah.
actually that when you share, when you talk about it, when you learn practices and things and ways to take care of your body, it is something that brings us together. Just like you're doing on this podcast, when we share, we talk about the hard things, the things it's healing.
Yeah.
And then when you learn practices, like I'd love to, like we should do a session sometime so that I
Yeah.
can give you some nervous system tools that would be wonderful things for you to do every day for your body. Because a lot of people also say that a lot of people in my industry, in the trauma healing, somatic healing industry, they say that pain is stuck sensation. And while many of us do have physical things happening, there is also the lifetime of everything that's happened to every single one of us humans. So learning your operating system, learning how to work with, like when triggers come up for you, when you notice excess sensations, there's things I can teach you how to do. Not that it's going to necessarily make the pain go away, but it can give you skills that you also don't feel like at mercy. Like, okay, you already said you have tools. You were doing this, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Yep. Yeah. So this one's called havening.
Yeah.
And this is great for your nervous system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a
Be-
lot of what you teach. And then does that also help? Because trauma also, like you said, trauma and pain are just almost like an endless cycle, right? Anytime somebody has pain, it's usually related to a trauma, or like you mentioned, trauma can cause pain. So do you teach and kind of help the tools to accept that, or a way to kind of break it? Or how do you kind of view that trauma pain cycle, and how do you get out of that kind of cycle?
Okay, let me think about that for a minute. So
Yeah.
I don't so much think of it as a cycle.
Okay.
The way that I visualize it is we have our body. Micro traumas, little things happen to us, like someone honks their horn at you in traffic and you feel that energy
Right.
roll up in your body and you don't say fuck you to them in
Right.
traffic, where if you did, you would move that energy out. So think about like a gazelle out in the plains of Africa. It's being chased by a lion. It's running, so it's able to flight. So we have these natural responses of our human organism to keep us safe. Okay, so it's running. It gets away from the lion. For some reason, lion tires out before the gazelle or something. And what's that gazelle going to do? It has all this energy, all these hormones and everything that's built up in it. What's that gazelle going to do after it knows it's safe? It's going to shake. It's going to
Yeah.
shake it off. So it's going to move that excess energy through itself. So us humans, though, we want to look so human that if some shit happens, we're like, no, I'm cool,
Right. Right.
you know?
Try
And
to put the
also,
face on.
yeah, and with them, yeah, and with emotions, it's like, no, I'm good, because we've been taught, and we're all learning now, that it's actually okay to feel. It's actually really powerful and really strong to feel. I mean, I'm
Right.
fucking showing up on social media crying. Like, listen, I did not think I would be doing this. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to have businesses. And then my soul was like, no, I hear this voice that is like, you're going to video yourself right now. I'm in like a emotional thing. They're like, you're going to show people
Yeah.
emotions are cool. So like my whole thing is like showing people emotions are cool again, letting people know they can be human, giving people places you can feel anger, because anger is like, number one, it can be scary. Number two, it can hurt people. Number three, if you're angry in public, you could get in trouble,
Yeah.
So like it's a valid emotion. It's an important emotion. Anger creates boundaries. Anger says, no, it's fucking enough.
Right.
But where can we do it without hurting people? How can we learn to channel that energy? So that's what I teach. So I have group experiences where I'll pick a specific emotion, like maybe we pick anger, rage, and then I do a playlist, I do somatic movements, I do nervous system practices. I teach you how to hold yourself through anything, through any emotion. I teach you tools so that when something comes up in life, and say you're triggered by your partner, or you're triggered at work, or you're triggered by your kid, what can you do for yourself? Not to make it go away, because it's not bad, but how to move that energy so it doesn't get stuck and stored in your body.
Right. Right. Because then,
Does that
like,
make
of
sense?
oh, total sense. And what
Okay.
a fantastic process and analogies to go through, because, like you mentioned, anything that builds up pressure eventually, right, explodes at one point.
Yeah.
So I think it's important too, like you mentioned, the importance of individuals like you and myself of bringing up the subjects that a lot of people don't want to talk about, kind of the harder stuff. But like you mentioned, like, there is a connection in that pain and in that suffering that we all kind of feel, right? Like, I tend to think, and I don't know if you believe that either, but that trauma can kind of connect us all. You know what I mean? Like you said, we're all connected by that pain and that trauma. And then for you to be able to take that and just turn it into what you've done, it really was inspiring to me to do what I've done. So I wanted to
You
thank
found the
you.
gift of it.
I
Oh,
did. I did. And when I thought, like, at 47, I didn't know what I was going to be able to give back to the world or do for the rest of my life. It was a tough transition to make, but then I came to the realization, like you did, that I had enough knowledge to at least, and more my side is giving the platforms to healers and people to just be able to speak about what they're going through, because I feel like that's a huge part of my healing, is to give a
yeah.
voice to the people who don't have that voice, or help encourage them to kind of spread that word. And
Well, I want to say,
the,
oh, sorry, go
no, no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
a couple things to that is that's not all you're doing. You are also showing people, like I've utilized you, I've shared your story with some of my clients who are in chronic pain, and you're also showing people there is life with pain. It's
Yeah.
not life of pain. You're showing people there is life with pain.
Yeah.
There is purpose. There is something you can do. I remember that place where I was so afraid. How am I going to be able to take care of my daughter and I if my brain doesn't work? Yes, I have a lot of my capacities back. How am I going to be able to take care of my daughter and I if my arm doesn't work? You know, like
Yeah.
it's such a scary moment. And the other thing I want to say is you said trauma bonds us, trauma brings us together. So there's a fine line there. There is trauma bonding where there are groups of people that get into these communities and they're bonding over the trauma, which can be debilitating because of depending on where they're coming from and their consciousness. If they're victimized by it, and if it's like, you know, poor me, poor me, poor me, or if it's an empowering community, it really depends on how the energy is circulating in the community. Are we using this to rise? Like you're using your platform right now? You're using this to give voices to pain, to hear people, to share solutions, to share stories, to let people know they're not fucking alone in their pain. Because that's one of the scariest things, right? I'm alone in here with
Yeah.
all this pain. No one can understand me.
Yeah.
I think no one like how cool has it felt now that you know you can talk to other people who've gone through what you've gone through,
Right. Right. And that's that thing
right?
too, like you said, even though I can't find people necessarily with my same conditions,
Yeah.
finding that group and community for me, especially with my social anxiety and being online, is it's been huge. It is definitely my healing and my healing practice. And you know, like most of us have, like in those dark, dark, dark times, you know, and you mentioned too, like having to accept the help from other people. So who, if you don't mind, and you mentioned a daughter, so I'm assuming like your main support circle would have to have her included in it. Do you have like a really close group of friends or family that are a part, or like practitioners or doctors or anybody who's sort of in your support circle, if you will, that you kind of lean
Yeah.
on?
Yeah. And I like what you call that. You call it the golden circle.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you call the golden circle? I
Yeah.
really love that term.
Well,
I
thank
really
you.
love that term. And I'm going to use
Yeah.
it with my clients because that's one of the things I teach is like where what I call it your team. Who's on your team?
Yeah. Sure.
You know, so it's very different now. Number one, I live in Mexico. I do totally have a team here, a new team that I've created and
Good.
but during the time of brain surgery, you know, I had my sister moved in with me at that
Okay.
time. I have my father lives in the same town, so he was a huge help. I had a girlfriend who was like by my side. She's a nurse, and she went to the like to the surgery with me, and like didn't leave my side in the aftercare. I had my spiritual teacher back then who was like doing energy work through my thing. And because the night of the surgery, coming off of all the stuff they give you when you go under, I was out there.
Yeah.
I was very out there and very connected, but I was seeing beings, I was talking to beings, I was like,
Sure.
whoa. And so my friend was like really scared. So she was like messaging with my spiritual teacher, you know, and they were, you know, so at that time, I had medical providers, I had my family and friends. Um, but I also, while they were all there, like once I got home, I was kind of like, guys, I got this.
Right.
You know, but I really didn't got it. You know,
Right. Sure.
I really needed now what I'm accepting. I needed more. And the thing that I want to speak to too is not everybody has people when they're in this place.
Right.
Not everybody has resources. Not everybody has money, like money resources. Not everybody has family support,
Yeah.
friends, community, access to the things we have had access to. And it's really fucked. And one of the biggest things that through just my own journey is like the isolation. Like when I was going through my shoulder and neck stuff, was like I didn't even have that because I live alone with my daughter. Thankfully, people were taking care of my daughter, and I try because she's 13. While she's my family, my love, I try not to go to her for mental, emotional, whatever support. I really try to, yeah, to be the mom still and be honest. That's one of the things that I have always taught her is through my humanity. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm really sad right now. I'm in a lot of
Yeah.
pain right now, and I teach her through it. I'm like, the humans go through this. Things happen, so she understands. And I tell her, I say, I want you to know I'm okay. I'm supported by a lot of people.
Right.
This may be scary for you right now, but I've got a team of people helping me, and I know I'm going to be okay. So I always talk with her through the brain surgery stuff, now through this recent stuff that's happened. So there's like that communication so that she knows she doesn't have to. I'm sure she does take on stuff, but she knows it's not her responsibility.
Right. And that's a beautiful thing. And I ask that just because there are so many others out there, like you mentioned, who don't have that circle. And I'm hoping that if any of them are watching the program right now, that they know that Infinity and myself are always here for you. And, your circle doesn't have to be friends or family. It can be just any part of a community that you feel good with. Now, for me, on that note, there was a phase in the beginning, and I've spoke to a little bit of people who there's this kind of phase you go through before you want to accept the help, and you're kind of in denial. Did you ever get kind of like I did and some other people, like that guilt that kind of set in, kind of like you felt like you were putting a bunch of stuff on people? And
Yeah.
how did it take you to process through that guilt phase that we all have?
Well, I mean, I think that I've had that for a long time.
Okay. Yeah.
like being even before I, had the brain surgery stuff, being a single mom, I felt guilty asking for help. There's this
Sure.
fucked up thing because community and culture and everything, there's this like, oh, you're strong if you can do it all by yourself. We've
Right.
become so isolated and so individual. Well, I think being you is important and individuation is important, but that we need community.
Yeah.
We need each other. And there's this part which I do still feel, I think it might be like a twinge of shame about is
Yeah.
when I need help. Like, why can't I do it all myself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why can't I figure it all out?
Yeah.
Like, and there's moments I think for every human where we cannot do it all our own. And it's really, those moments are really scary.
Yeah. And
And
that's
those
the
moments are when I go to God.
Yeah, and then again, that's where you have to seek that higher power, especially when you're just feeling the guilt, or like I'm sure you felt like we all have like the burden, right? Like I'm no longer even me, like my wife, I'm no longer a husband, I'm just a patient of yours, and what making my daughter watch, go through what I had to go through. But like you mentioned, I think in the end, like you did, it makes us all stronger, right? Like I'm sure your daughter has gained a ton of tools from you to be even stronger, because I feel like my daughter's stronger than I am at my age then, because of what I've gone through. So even though it's
Mhm.
hard, do you feel like obviously that's a positive thing to kind of have to go through with her? You know what I mean? Do you feel like it's really showing her, like you said, that empowerment and just to get
Well,
through?
I mean, I think it's good for actually everyone that I'm around
Yeah,
because what
good,
I do is I fucking show my humanity.
good, good,
Whether it's emotions or pain or fear, I talk about it. Like I
good.
talk about it in my writing, I talk about it online, I talk about it with my friends. Like I just had a
Yeah,
circumstance locally here. I was at a doctor's office, and I had a woman come up to me that I was doing some workshops and retreats with me. And in the preparation for the workshops and retreats, I got really like angry and frustrated because it's a silly thing, but I had been waiting in my car for everyone to come for me to drive them to go do this preparation stuff. And nobody texts me. I'm waiting in my car for an hour. I'm texting, like, where are you guys? I don't know where the house is, so I can't go in. So I'm just like building and building and like, God, this is rude. This is, like so disrespectful. So finally they come down to the car and I'm like, you guys, I just have to tell you, I'm like really frustrated. I feel like you guys you didn't honor me. You didn't even think about me. I've been down here waiting to give you a ride for
Right.
an hour. And and then I cried afterwards and they were like, we're really sorry. Like, we didn't think about blah, 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 blah. We thought you'd come in the door. And I'm like, well, I don't know where the fucking door is.
Right.
So we worked through it, cleared the air. I was able to move on and go do all the shopping we needed to do without that energy inside me. I didn't hold that energy inside me. I didn't hold
Right.
that emotion inside me. I didn't also throw it up on them. I worked with it. I said the words. I let the emotions and the energy out. I wasn't like, fuck you guys. I was just like,
Right.
I feel disrespected. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. And so the woman in the doctor's office the other day, she says to me, I didn't know that this affected her. So we don't know who we're touching. We don't know who we're affecting through what's going on with us, through how through how we're showing up in the world, we don't know. And she says to me, thank you so much. You taught me something that day. And I was like, really? What? She's like, that emotions are okay, that
Yeah.
you can say that you can feel that, and that it doesn't mean that the relationship's done, but it can actually create more connection when we're honest, when we're real, when we're vulnerable, when we show those parts of our humanity. She was just like, thank you. I'm going to do that more. I'm going to try. I'm trying now. And I was just like, wow. I had no idea, because to me, it's like, it's not a big thing. I'm like, hey, it's been a decade of practicing that though. Like, how do you start to feel comfortable enough to show your emotions, to show your humanity? And it comes back to the work that I do, the work that I've been trained in, that my body trained me in, that also
Yeah.
classes and courses and teachers, is how to work with your body, with your emotions, and with your nervous system.
Yeah. And it's amazing that through the traumas and, like you said, through the social pressures, that we have to work through that stuff so hard. Like those social pressures that are put on us, like you mentioned, can be quite debilitating. So it's refreshing, like you said, to be able to find a way to express those emotions. And like I always say and try to bring up, like mental health awareness, right? Because not everybody has a visual disability. Like, you're beautiful, you look fantastic today. I'm trying to look great and good. But
Yeah.
it's, you do have to let people know that, like, hey, like, this may not have affected certain people in one way, but I have this and this is how it affected me. So I feel like you said about speaking your truth and really trying to share the education. And so a lot of times, do you feel like you're also teaching people, like, not how to speak, but like I had a lot of friends that would give me in the beginning, like, oh, we're so sorry. Oh, poor you. Oh, yeah, like that. And you get really sick of that. So I had to kind of teach did you kind of have to help people with that verbalization a little bit of how they verbalize towards you?
I think that, yes, and I think that that is part of our responsibility. Not only those of us who've been through heavy shit, but how do you want to be treated? How do you
Right,
want to be talked to? What is okay for you? What are
right,
your boundaries? Like, one of the things that I teach is when we come back into our bodies, when we learn how to work with our operating system, our nervous system, we start to feel again. We start to feel when someone says something to you and it hits you and you're like, that doesn't feel right. So you start to use your voice and say, like, hey, I'm not okay with and it's not from a place, because there's fear that, like, if I say that, and I work with this with my daughter, because she's 13 and she's really afraid, like, well, if I say that, then they're not going to like me. If I say that, then this, you're afraid if
yeah,
you speak your truth, then it's going to, hurt the relationship or something. But people want to know. Like, the
right.
people that you want in your life, they want to know these things. How do I support you? Because people don't know. Like, I actually had during during the times when I was like really, really dark and most like had the most suicidal ideation, I had a manual that I wrote up for my friends and family. When I say get me to the trees, that means number one, somebody needs to pick up my kid. Number two, somebody needs to pick me up and get me to the trees. Number three,
Right.
it was like, it was, I was not okay and I needed support. And so it's one of those things, you know, where I work with my clients and someone like, well, I don't have anyone. And so it's part of building, you know, like maybe you don't right in this moment, but it's part of finding your community, finding your resources, finding the people who can be that for you. And I know, like you said, you know, you can feel like that burden on you. It's there's so much, which I'm sure that you've experienced, of like the inner work that we have to unwind within ourselves about, you know, those beliefs and protections and the things that we put on ourselves that actually separate us from the love and connection we really need.
Right, right. And so, how do you feel like in ways, like in a lot of ways, a lot of us, including myself, when you kind of go through any traumatic event or like disease or disorder, I often try, and it's been so recent for me, like I still kind of mourn the old me, if you will. Is there still like that feeling you have for yourself of like a before you and then an after you? And do you kind of feel that sense, or what's the difference, whether positive or negative? How do you feel that difference between the old you and the you now?
Yeah, I totally know that feeling. I remember it really strongly with the brain surgery stuff because I used to be a like go getter,
Yeah,
do, push harder, make it happen,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah,
And I didn't have that anymore, and I didn't have my mental capacity. I couldn't remember shit, and I couldn't work in a linear way, and it wasn't like A B C D. It was like A Z Q P. Like I don't know, where am I? Am I spinning in circles? So I was very much out of that linear way. Life got very chaotic and very messy, and it was like, oh my god, how the fuck am I gonna run my business, take care of my kids? So for me, the main fear was around survival. Like, how am I gonna
right,
take care of us if I'm not who I was?
right.
If I don't have the mental physical capacities that I had before? Literally, I was like, I don't know how I will be able to take care of us.
Yeah,
And so that was like that was like the main fear that came up then. And that was really when I started to realize the other capacities that I have. Like, I actually usually, when I write and when I speak, I'm not thinking. I had to use something other than my brain. The information comes through me. Like, I can feel the energy and it just writes itself. There was times after brain surgery where I couldn't stop writing. I couldn't go to sleep until I had written it out. There was like a whole week where it was only rhymes. So, like, the information starts to come through you. There is something greater than us working through us. So, I learned about this. Whatever you want to call that energy, whatever you want to call that intuition, whatever you want to call that divine way of operating, that something showed up for me that I probably had access to, but my mind, my ego, my personality was so stuck on me being this successful entrepreneur that was a go-getter that would make it happen. And it was like, no. And every time now that I try to operate like that again, because I have a lot of my capacities back, I get fucking knocked out. It's like, nope, you are operating with
yeah,
God now. You are
yeah,
operating with the universe now. You are on a soul path and your ego is not in charge anymore. Get on your fucking knees, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And that can be a beautiful thing too. And like you said, like, so it sounds like for you, like most, like, even though, like I mentioned too, do you feel stronger now as a person, even though you physically and mentally went through that trauma? Do you feel stronger as a person now than you did before? And are you more appreciative of that hardship you went through where you're sitting now? Would you trade it? You know what I mean? Would you trade it for anything? Yeah, no, right.
No,
Yeah,
no. So the way that I look at every single trauma is like I don't always find the gift of it right in the moment. Sometimes I can and I'm like, "Oh, I get it. You're redirecting me over here." But sometimes it's weeks later, months later, years later that I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah. I am more me now than I have ever been before. The only thing that I've ever wanted was to be me." So I feel like every single one of the things that's happened throughout my life, and because I utilize it, the gift of it, to go deeper into myself, to remove some layer, to like release some emotion, like it's brought me closer and closer and closer to like to me. And that is what I feel like I teach, I embody, is like becoming you, removing everything that is not you that we put on, thinking we needed it to protect us, to keep us safe. No, so I see the gift and the blessing, and I'm so grateful for each and everything that's happened. And that isn't to say that there's definitely been periods of grief, of old ways of being, of old capacities that I used to have. But what I found is the new things that came in, like this new extrasensory capacity that I have to operate in a way that it doesn't make sense. Like, you ask my family, I look crazy. I look crazy to a lot of people because I don't operate in the way that the world says we should be. I operate in a way that is scary to a lot of people. It's
Sure,
unconventional,
sure.
and those who care about us, they want us to be okay, but you're not doing it the way that makes me feel okay or makes me
Right,
understand you. So I don't understand your journey,
right.
So like you have to be willing also to be like, I'm not listening to anybody else. I'm going to do it the way I'm hearing it, the way I'm feeling it.
Yeah, and which is a powerful thing too, because just like most of us with our healthcare, you have to take control, right, of not just your healthcare and advocate for yourself, but like you mentioned, you have to take more control of your surroundings, who you're with, again, like how people treat you or talk to you, things like that.
Well, and I
Um,
mean, you've become an expert in your disorder, right?
yeah. Yeah, and that's that thing too that after, at first it was really hard for me to speak about what I was going through because I didn't gain the tools yet. But obviously, through the same with me, like there are, I wouldn't trade it for anything either. I mean, I, like you, really love talking to like people and individuals and stuff like that. And I found it hard to like go out into public anymore or speak. So I was really blessed to find this avenue to be able to still provide something, some type of platform or something. So, and
Yeah.
again, I just can't tell you how much of an inspiration you've been to me throughout this process, and just a dear friend and sister that I watch all the time and think about. Is there any type of like, can you send us or just give us or like post some links or memberships or any further info you want people to know about your classes or your courses? Like, can you kind of give us links or something on there on what you
Yep.
do?
Yeah, I just dropped them.
Any other questions?
So I have a YouTube channel that has free practices, somatic and nervous system practices that I just dropped in the comments. You can follow me on Instagram or follow me on Facebook. I do different things on both of them. And then I have a monthly somatic membership, $33 a month. It's pre-recorded nervous system videos. I also do a monthly Q&A in there, so you can come and work with me live. We can talk about what's going on for you. We can work through your specific stuff. As that membership builds, I'm going to start doing like a weekly class as well, but I just don't have like the I want to show up to a weekly class, with like 5 people, 10 people, 20 people,
Yeah.
it really helps me bring my energy to it. So for right now, it's pre-recorded stuff, but you can access me for questions and stuff. And then I do one-on-one work and retreats. So that's
Oh,
what I got
right.
going on right now. I am starting my own podcast. We are calling it, we're calling it Human. Hold on, where is it? I don't remember, but like the main title is Human.
Okay.
And it's like just exploring the depths of your humanity.
Oh, we
And so
love
we'll
that.
talk about shadow work, inner child healing, trauma, the nervous system, the neuroscience, like all sorts of different stuff. So it's going to start. Me and a girlfriend, Acacia Land, are starting that. So we're just getting that all put together right now.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And when you are ready, please share all that link and info because, again, and it sounds like with what you're doing and what I'm doing, obviously, we're going to have those interconnections on a lot of different areas. So
Yeah.
I'd obviously love to come on. So, other than that, is there any messages for anyone out there who's maybe beginning their journey, who's just starting out, who's maybe younger than we are? Is there any just like something you can give to them or anything you want to say? Like if you could say something to yourself back then, just any messages you want to send people like that.
Mm. I just want to say, like, there's no getting out of life without pain.
Beautiful. Right.
Pain is a language of the body. It has purpose and guidance.
Yeah.
It shows you where you've become disconnected and is a guiding light for you towards wholeness. Healing is the process of becoming whole, integrating all of our parts. And so, like Jed and I have both shared, like our journey with pain has brought us into a sense of wholeness that maybe we wouldn't have had without this. Even just our connection together when we had our first call, it brought us both to tears. I got
Yeah.
like those tingles that you get in your body when you just know, when you feel that soul connection, that you're on your soul path. Well, it's been painful and hellacious at times. Like it's brought us here using our voices and teaching and sharing and connecting and bringing people together. There's love here. There's
Yeah.
purpose here.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's just a wonderful message for anybody to hear, especially the people or the youth out there that are going through anything. And again, I just want to remind everybody to please follow my dear sister and all of her work, her workshops, everything she does. I get a lot out of it. I hope that you do too. And sister, again, I just want to thank you so much for helping out and being a part of the program and coming on the show today. And if you wouldn't mind, do you mind if we check back in with you in like a month and just kind of see
No,
where you're?
let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
I'd love to do one since we didn't get to it today. I'd love to do one where I actually teach some practices, where I actually
So
give
let's
people some tools.
so do you let's just plan for that now. So on the
Okay.
next, I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to do that on the next one, we
Yep.
can kind of talk about that a bit more. But if
Yep.
anybody out there is interested, we'll try to do that on the next one just to prepare them.
Cool.
And I'd love to give you that opportunity and that platform to just show people that because what you do is just fantastic, sister. Keep doing what you're doing. You inspire me, and just so much love to you. And thank you again. Yeah.
I feel the same. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Jed. All right. I love you.
Love you too. Appreciate you.
All right. Bye.
Right, sister. Bye.